God, I'm telling you, my dogs are barking today.
But man, my dogs are barking.
Well, welcome into the My Dogs Are Barking podcast for this side-by-side edition. Man, we're so excited to be joined today by Robbie Faulk. I got Austin here alongside me, but we also have Robbie joining us today. Man, Robbie, how are you doing so far? Man, we're at this point in the season where like it's pretty much here. How are you feeling?
I don't know. I really don't know how I feel at this point. I'm just decided, I'm going to dive in head first and see what happens when the season gets going. But I mean, right now, I'm just kind of waiting and seeing, just like everybody else, just like the rest of you guys. We don't really know what to expect with the Jeff Lebby era. I'm excited to see what happens. I don't think it can get a whole lot worse than what it was last year for Mississippi State, but I'm always excited, when a new football season starts, and especially when you have a kind of a fresh start like this. It should be fun to watch. So we're all going to learn together, man. Within the next couple of weeks, we'll know. We'll kind of have a good idea to know what Mississippi State's got.
I got you. And again, Robbie, thank you so much for being on. I've really just listened to you for a number of years. So thank you so much for this. This is a big opportunity. Like you said, with Jeff Lebby, you brought up Jeff Lebby. First year head coach, last year, Zach Arnett, first year head coach. What, just being in the media, being there all the time, what's kind of something that you've seen that's like a big difference between obviously Zach Arnett, he's defensive minded, Jeff Lebby offensive minded, but what's like just a key difference between last year and this year?
I think you have a guy that has a plan whenever he became a head coach. And, that's not a knock on Zach Arnett, because Zach Arnett, how was he supposed to have a plan with everything that happened with Mike Leach and with him getting thrust into being a head coach? He was not expecting to be a head coach at that point in his career. This is a guy that had been a defensive coordinator in the SEC for 3 seasons, and suddenly, his boss, Mississippi State's head coach, suddenly passes away, and he has to step into that role in a matter of days. And he had to get ready for a bowl game. He had to get ready for a signing class and making sure that group was put together. Jeff Lebby looks like a guy that has been planning this for a long time. He's had in mind what he's going to do with practices, drills, how he would address recruiting, how he's going to build a staff. I mean, this guy was prepared, and it might not have shown in his selection of, coaches. I'm sure he would have liked to have gotten a sitting defensive coordinator, and there's probably a few other positions that he would have liked to fill with coaches with a little more experience. But I think as far as, the plan on a day-to-day basis and his philosophy as a head coach, I think Jeff Lebby has been waiting for this moment. And, we've talked about it a lot in this offseason on Thunder and Lightning and, everywhere else, that it really feels like a lot of similarities to that 2009 season with Dan Mullen, and how Dan Mullen came in prepared to run his own program, and then kind of the new energy. I think there was a lot more energy in the fan base and in the building than it was right now. I think 2009 definitely had more of a jolt of energy, but a lot of that had to do with the circumstances of, basically a decade worth of losing for Mississippi State. It's a little bit different now, and it's a little bit different era of football. So you might not see that same level of excitement that you did for Dan Mullen, but I do think that people are excited to see what Jeff Lebby has. And I think that he has definitely come in prepared for this moment. I've never had a sense of, maybe this guy isn't quite ready to be a head coach. I feel much differently about Jeff Lebby coming into the season than I did with, Zach Arnett and even Joe Moorhead taking over as head coaches for the first time on this level, at least.
I got you with that. I mean, that's just, it makes you feel good to hear for sure. What's kind of some of the, a lot of roster turnover from last year to this year? What's kind of the big, I guess, like the big playmakers that we could be looking out for come August 31st? What are some guys that weren't here last year that can make a big impact week 1?
Well, I think you got to look first and foremost at that wide receiver group, and you look at Kelly Akari coming over from UTEP, a 1,000-yard receiver. Obviously, you feel like he can transition that to the SEC fairly well. Maybe not 1,000 yards, but I think that's certainly possible for him to do, especially if he stays healthy. Kevin Coleman, who has played in the Power Five at Louisville and did some good things there, was the newcomer of the year at Jackson State in the SWAC. Much different level there, but that was a 4-star player coming out of high school that turned down a lot of really good schools to go play for Deion Sanders. And then Deion Sanders leaves and he has another opportunity at a pretty good school in Louisville. And now he's at an SEC school. So I think that guy is certainly ready for this level. So those two come to mind right away as far as newcomers are concerned and guys that can make a difference for you. I think Davon Booth certainly can do some things for you at running back, fairly dynamic guy, did some good things at Utah State last year. And I think transitioning this offense, there's a lot of things they can do with him. And I'm hearing really good things about Johnny Daniels, who came in last year playing junior college football at Colin. I think that he's going to be a surprise for Mississippi State at running back in a group that could be really deep and I think pretty productive this year after struggling at times last year. And that offense, I think that the running back crew can be pretty good this year. So those are a few names. Then obviously Blake Shapen, I mean, we know about him. Your season pretty much lies on his shoulders. He's got to be healthy and he's got to be good for you this year if you want to go to a bowl game.
Yeah, and you mentioned the playmakers, the guys that people know. I think there's the sides of the ball have been kind of the opposite in terms of the fan base. The defensive side are there's a lot of question marks, maybe even some worry. But I'd love just to hear from you, maybe kind of the flip the script on that, like. The defense, what are some reasons for optimism? What are some things that we're looking at that we're going, man, I think that there's these guys that are stepping up here. Is there any place for optimism, or is it all just worry on the defensive side of the ball?
No, I think that there's a chance for that linebacker crew to be really good this year. I think they're fairly deep, actually. Heard some really good things about Stone Blanton so far, and also John Lewis has really stepped up since he's kind of, flipped the calendar from being a guy that was really learning under Buki Watson and Jet Johnson to now he's a junior and it's his turn. I think that he's really taken initiative in that role and he's become a leader for this defense along with Stone Blanton. JP Purvis, obviously, he's been here for 6 years, I think, at this point, and is expected to have a big season also. So I like the linebackers. I like what they have behind them. We're not talking about Brandon Jennings, who's had a really good camp, a guy that was, freshman All-American at Maryland and has had, some setbacks the last couple of years. But, he's a guy that was playing, pretty high-level football right away out of high school, and he's still capable of doing that. I think he could be a surprise there at linebacker. So I really like that linebacker group. I really like the safety group. I think those two are probably going to be the strengths of your defense, the middle there and then the back end with the safeties. That's where your best depth is, and pretty much the only experience that you have that's fairly extensive is in those two groups. A lot of question marks up front, a lot of question marks at cornerback. So those are the two positions to watch, and those are important. But, as far as the positives of the defense, I think that you can look at those two position groups and say that's a really good building block. And they've had good camps. But the linebackers and safeties, that's where all the standouts have basically been at this point. So I like both of those groups going into 2024.
And Robbie Faulk joining us with On3 Sports and Starkville Daily News. Robbie, the opposite side of the ball, the offense is the side of you. We were there at the spring game. People saw things from Mississippi State that, frankly, they might not have ever seen, of throwing the ball that far down the field, of having some playmakers down the field. So there's a lot of excitement for that. But, you just mentioned some optimism on the defensive side of the ball. Is there anything with the offense that – even though there's a lot of excitement, is there anything that you would just kind of maybe throw some caution to the wind when it comes to the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it all revolves for me around Blake Shapen and his health. He's been very healthy from the spring to the fall training camp ending here. He's shown no signs of being banged up or, a guy that's going to be, that's going to be a problem for you the rest of the year. But he has had those issues in the past, and that's certainly something to keep an eye on. Is when the games begin, he's had some issues being injured. You have got to have him healthy throughout the season. I think that number one is the biggest question mark for me. And then number two is I don't have a ton of concern for the offensive line, but at the end of the day, only one of these guys has been, a starter at Mississippi State, and that's Albert Reese. Has even played any snaps at Mississippi State. Every one of these guys are transfers outside of Albert Reese, and he started 2 games last year. Marlon Martinez has played a lot of SEC football at guard, and I don't have a ton of concerns about him because he kind of knows how it goes on this level. But, McCallum Pounders was really good, but it was at Memphis. Ethan Miner was really good, but it was at North Texas. And Jacoby Jackson, he played Power 5 football at Texas Tech. But putting all 5 of these guys on the field for the first time, it's got to be a little bit of a worry for you just until you know what it is. But I don't have a ton of concern about that group, but I just want to see what they look like come game 1, if they're having pre-snap problems, if they're not on the same page communication-wise. That's always a concern when you have new faces up front. But, we'll obviously get to check that out this year. But everybody says that group is cohesive, that they're communicating well, that they've built good relationships. So that's one of the question marks for me.
I got you, and that's really interesting. I think you're right about the offensive line for sure. But we're 11 days out for football in Davis Wade. I know we're so excited. I know you got to be so excited getting it all started. And just what is your expectations for week 1, Jeff Lebby in this offense and this defense, but just for the game in general? What is kind of your expectation against Eastern Kentucky?
My expectations are, Mississippi State to come out and just, do what they're supposed to do in this game, and that's just bludgeon them. I mean, when you have a team that's this talented, in comparison to Eastern Kentucky at least, you should come out and beat that team fairly easily. So Mississippi State should be able to score a lot of points. They should be able to get stops on defense. They should be able to force turnovers. We should be seeing, the bench emptied out in the second half. I expect this game to be a blowout. It needs to be a blowout. And, that's my expectations for this. And I think for Jeff Lebby, you're trying to ignite the fan base a little bit, get them excited. There's not a ton of excitement right now because I don't think a lot of people know what to expect. I think that's part of the issue here. But after that first game, there should be people leaving that ball game and saying, I know it was Eastern Kentucky, but that was impressive. Blake Shapen was making passes that we haven't seen at Mississippi State. Kelly Akari and Kevin Coleman are legit. We love seeing Stonka Burnside. That's what people should be saying when they leave the stadium. And I think for Jeff Lebby, that should be priority number 1 is I've sold this, Showtime at State thing. We're going to put on a show. I need to put on a show. And that's what they need to do game 1.
Yeah, I got you. And so just seeing since Jeff Lebby got here, I believe I think it was like late November. It was when he got hired, I believe. Ever since he's been here, there's been a lot of, I feel like, just excitement in recruiting. What has been with just what Jeff Lebby brings in this play style? What has been the difference in recruiting with just this play style and what you've seen from years past?
Well, I think he's got the ability to sell every position. It's fun to play for the offensive line. Everybody talks about, when you have these high powering offense, everybody talks about the passing game, and they have explosives in the passing game in Jeff Lebby's offense as much as anybody in the country. But the rushing game is really where it all begins for them. And if you look at the numbers rushing wise of what he's done at UCF and Oklahoma and Ole Miss, they've ran the ball really well with multiple running backs. You have the ability to sell to running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, offensive linemen. On the offensive side of the ball, you can sell this offense to everybody. And that wasn't really the case with Kevin Barbay's offense. it really wasn't the case with Mike Leach's offense either. But this offense in particular, you can sell that. And I think that's why they're in the game with a lot of guys the last 2 years, whether it be in the transfer last year, whether it be the transfer portal or in high school recruiting. That's why they're in the game with these wide receivers, 4-star quarterbacks, really explosive running backs, because they see the potential in this offense to do some really good things. So it's definitely an offense that lends itself to selling to some big-time recruits. And I think the only thing that can help them recruit moving forward is showing it on the field. Jeff Lebby and his staff do a good job of selling it. This is a good recruiting group for the most part, especially Chad Bumpus and what we're seeing from Cody Kennedy so far. But you've kind of reached the point now with a lot of guys that they want to see them actually prove it on the field. So that's what this season's all about. Jeff Lebby might not do it as far as wins and losses are concerned, but he can sell it in what he's producing, as far as the offensive numbers are concerned. They might win 5 games, but you could sell that to Caleb Cunningham or players like that you can come here and we're going to do some big things. This offense is only going to get better with you in it. So you can stay right here in Mississippi, and I can get you the ball more than anybody else in the country. So that's kind of what this season's all about for Lebby, is you got to be able to sell this thing.
And, lastly, I know, and football, not related to football, but certainly, an entertaining sport, and that is professional wrestling. I gotta ask you a question. So we got, Roman Reigns comes back, but Cody Rhodes is in the middle of his title reign, and to me, and I think to Austin as well, it's a little lackluster. Like, he's too much of a nice guy. Are you team Roman Reigns? Like, you ready for him to get back in this? Or are you really enjoying this title run from Cody?
Well, I actually, a couple of years ago, I was sick of Roman Reigns. I felt like when he was a babyface, I really felt like they were shoving him down our throats a lot like they did with John Cena, which, I've grown to like John Cena a lot too, just because, you have to respect what he's done. But, Roman Reigns really grew on me, and what he did with the bloodline, I thought that was one of the best storylines in the last, 20 years. There have not been storylines quite like that for a long time. And you add in, Cody Rhodes wanting to break through, his family was never able to have, a sustained run as a champion. Dusty Rhodes got it for, a few minutes and had to give the belt back. And that's kind of what he's been battling ever since he came up, in the WWE. And they put the Stardust gimmick on him. And, the Rhodes have kind of been a joke in WWE since they've been there. And now he comes in and he had gotten so huge with wrestling fans when he had left WWE. WWE couldn't stop it at that point. And they finally have just ridden him now. I don't know the best way to go, the best direction to go. Right now, Cody Rhodes, if you look at all the merchandise numbers, he is one of the highest selling superstars that the company's ever had. He's beating out, Stone Cold. He's beating out Roman Reigns, The Rock. He's selling more merchandise than John Cena, all those guys. He is the top of the ladder right now with Fanatics, who's kind of runs their merchandise. So he's, as they say, he's over. And until the fans tell you, I think you got to ride him. But I do love Roman Reigns coming back and kind of starting this feud with Solo, and kind of a different bloodline is involved at this point. I like where things are. I watch WWE, and I'm so much more enthralled with it than I am AEW at this point. I feel like their storylines are better, their production is better. They're just running circles around them at this point. And I go back to SummerSlam, and every single match that we watched SummerSlam had been built. A story had been told. Every single match meant something. And that's what I love about professional wrestling. I love the storytelling and all that stuff. And I like what they're doing right now. I don't know what direction they're going to go here with Cody and Roman, but I'm here for it.